Hi everyone, and welcome to my first proper review for a while. First, many thanks to Birdseye Games and Microprose for the review key, and secondly, my sincere apologies to them as this has taken a long time to get a review out. Because sadly, the week that I had set aside to put all my time into Regiments and do the review, I caught Nurgle's Plague, aka COVID, so I couldn't put the hours in that I really wanted to do the game justice. However, I now feel we have hit that milestone, so without further ado, Regiments is a Cold War gone hot scenario RTS where you control multiple platoons of units rather than single units, so it's 3 tanks in a group rather than 1, for example. At the current time of writing or recording, it is a single player only game with a campaign that is set out as a series of operations and a selection of skirmish modes to play through. Those skirmish modes include what I would call a standard skirmish, where you control the victory points, an attack mode where you have to be more aggressive, and a moving defense mode where you will have to move to defend various locations. Before I move on to the gameplay, let's just have a look at the recently released roadmap, because it's adding some fun things to the game. So yes, there's a roadmap for the next year, which includes upcoming free DLC to add new operations and the UK forces into the skirmish mode, along with other new units and maps. After that, there will be a paid DLC of the Northern Group Forces, or Northag you might say, with a full UK roster plus the addition of the Netherlands and Poland, as well as heliborne and motorised infantry. And then there will be further DLC based on the Central Group Forces, including France, Canada and Czechoslovakia, as well as custom operations that will allow you to set your own parameters for the existing operations templates, such as which regiments will be involved. And then there will be a final update which is yet to be decided exactly what that is. The developer has included a list of potential additions, which I've also popped on the screen now, but these are in an experimental stage and there is no guarantee they will be added, as it might just simply be too much work. Bear in mind that this entire game was primarily made by just one developer. Now, a lot of people ask about multiplayer, but the word from the developer is definitely not in the 2022 to 2023 cycle, and previous comments suggest that it may not be something that is considered till Regiments 2 is released. Assuming we get a Regiments 2, of course. Let's move on to the gameplay section. So with this being a single player game, there is significant focus on the operations, which are the game's version of a campaign. In these you get a specific regiment to play, a short outline of the mission, and then are presented with a screen where you can spend points. You start with a set number of points depending on the difficulty level, and then can earn more during the phases of each stage. Each stage has multiple phases. Straightforward, a little bit confusing, you'll get what I mean. These points can then be spent on additional units via task forces, upgrading a task force that you've already picked, repairing existing platoons, buying additional call-in authority, additional supply, additional tac aid points, and I'll explain those shortly, or engineering points to be used to place defences on some of the missions. Some additional unit cards you can purchase will include or can be upgraded to include tac aid options. These include off-map bombing runs, off-map artillery, illumination flares at night, amongst others. This is where the tac aid points come in. Upgrading them on the mission screen means you get more per tick and therefore you will have more overall. So if you rely heavily on the tac aid options, then you'll want to upgrade that. They're a lot of fun to use, and the AI would also use them during the game, both the allied ones and the enemy, so you need to be prepared for that. I really liked how when the bombers came in there was a risk enemy AA would stun them before they dropped their bombs, and thus they veered off. It stopped them being all-powerful, shall we say. Of course, some of them differ from that. For example, the huge tactical missile you get is a completely different matter entirely. Overall, I found this point spending system to be really fun. It allowed me to further tailor the regiment to my own playstyle, though I will say, as with many of these games, tanks are king, so often they are an important extra to take. There were only a few times I felt I was truly struggling with points, even playing the game on hard, so the system does not really penalise you too much if you want to play on a harder difficulty level. After spending your points, you're presented with the option to pick an event card for the phase of battle. These are really fun additions that can really change up the playthroughs. Some are beneficial, some are negative, and some simply have no effect at all. But you have to pick one, so eventually you will have to take the negative ones too. Without spoiling too much, some of these example cards would be the enemy AI getting some reinforcements in the form of a few platoons, or for example, you getting some reinforcements from an allied AI player. but it could also be a weather-based card where fog patches will appear on the map and block line of sight, a bit like smoke would. Some of the operations also have other event cards in play that the enemy has picked or that are default to the map, so it's worth checking those when you get into the game. Once you're in the game, there is a wide variety of units to be playing with. You have recon teams, which are vehicles which have better line of sight or better optics than other units will have. Obviously you have your standard units, your tanks, you have your artillery pieces, you have your mortars, and the mortars will of course auto-fire, which is a very nice addition to the game. I don't have to babysit them quite so much. And beyond the obvious supply trucks, there is also infantry. Infantry comes in many different forms. You have standard infantry, you have anti-tank infantry, you have engineers that are very good at taking down enemy defensive lines, where they've built lots of tank traps or sandbag walls, so they all come in handy. What sets them apart from infantry in other such games is that they always come with their vehicles. This could be a simple transport vehicle with a machine gun on top, or this could be a full-fledged infantry fighting vehicle, such as a BMP with a cannon and a missile launcher. There are also a selection of anti-tank units, basically ATGM missiles on vehicles, and of course there are anti-air units. And something you have to pay attention with all of these units, especially the infantry, are the ranges on their weapons. That's something to consider when you are moving in to engage enemy forces. Obviously the majority of these units are available in the skirmish mode as well as the existing operations. Of the operations currently in the game, they start out really interesting. One has an event where some chemical containers explode, which has an effect on the whole battlefield, and it's just a really fun little sequence that goes on. Another mission is, for example, defending a retreating convoy from your allies. Sadly, as the operations go on, they become more and more similar, leaving behind these early concepts for a much more standard supply line skirmish mode, which I think is a real shame. The early operations therefore set the scene for something greater than it actually ends up, which was a bit of a disappointment when it came to the end. The AI in the game also has its limitations. It is very good at a full frontal assault, but really struggles with any encircling maneuvers or breakthrough tactics. It is unable to respond effectively when you get round behind it, basically. So yes, admittedly, cheesing the AI is as simple as rushing some fast units around behind it and then pummeling it from behind. I tried not to do this too much during my playthrough, as I wanted to make my life harder and really enjoy playing against the AI, and honestly, I really did enjoy most of my time playing against it. The only time I really did not enjoy it was when, towards the end of the campaigns or the operations, it became a spam fest. You weren't really fighting the AI, it was more the AI was spamming in so many elite units that were fully ranked up, you were getting smashed by them. But in general, other than these instances in the actual campaigns or the operations, the AI was actually a lot of fun to play against. You know, you could make it as challenging as you wanted by whether you chose to cheese it a bit or not. And the nice thing is about Regiments, you can sort of take it at your own pace. You can either play it as a very standard RTS where you're just attacking enemy units, or you can take it a bit more seriously and actually take into account the front, side, rear armor, all of that sort of thing, and really come in from the sides and use tactics. But the option is there that if you want a slightly more relaxed approach, you can indeed just bash around like you would in C&C, for example. And all of that leads in my mind to this being a very accessible game for a wide portion of people. You aren't purely reliant on using very tactical maneuvers all the time like you would be in some other tactical RTS type games. A quick note on the skirmish modes is that they are fun for a quick blast, and it offers you the chance to play as any of the regiments you want, and I am eagerly awaiting the British forces to be added to that list. As always, I'll do a little section on the graphics and sound. So graphically the game is quite pretty and the detail on the units is very good, especially when you zoom right in. The weapon fire and explosions are all easy to tell apart and have very nice effects attached to them. The landscape itself is a bit hit and miss, but it's nice enough for the fact that most of the time you're going to be zoomed out looking down at your units. The sound is equally very suitable. I do wish there were more or louder sound indicators sometimes when you're losing units, as you can be a bit lost when something is destroyed over the other side of the map. However, the individual unit sounds, the weapon sounds, and the background sounds and music are all really fitting, and I did very much appreciate that the background music in this was not copyrighted and I could leave it in my videos. Overall, in my mind, the mainstay of the game are the operations. But I can't help but wish that towards the end of their operations there had still been these interesting events or interesting takes on missions like there were in the beginning, rather than becoming a very standard affair, which kind of let the game down a little bit towards the end. However, that said, I had so much fun with the game and the many hours I spent in it, and the various operations. They were fun, they provided a challenge to a point, and the skirmish mode added a little extra, allowing you to experiment with the other divisions. It is genuinely a game you can really play how you want to play it, rather than having to play a specific way or be defeated. What sits in the back of my mind is longevity, and I feel like once you play the operations and maybe do them a couple of times over on increasing difficulty, play a bit of the skirmish, by that point you've kind of sussed out the AI, you can counter it pretty easily, even if you're just a beginner to these types of games, I would imagine. And then there's not a lot beyond that. And although there is some DLC coming, which is really welcome, I really want to see more operations, I think that, you know, this is a symptom of it being a single-player game, and all single-player games suffer from that, especially in this genre, because without the multiplayer, you can't put yourself up against people who play very differently. I'm of course not going to mark the game down for the fact that it's a single-player only title, because I knew that going in. It's just more a point of, I kind of wish it had a multiplayer, because I think it would be very fun to play against others. I think the other thing that would be very nice in a game like this is a modding or scenario editor or operations editor that I think would be very beneficial. And I know there are plans for something along those lines, but it won't be quite an independent one. It'll just be adjusting stuff in the pre-existing operations rather than making your own. And obviously there are technical and legal implications as to why they're unable to do that this time, but I think it's something they should consider for Regiments 2, as having a Steam workshop with custom missions and custom scenarios in general would be really beneficial and really add to the longevity of the game, because communities are fantastic at that sort of thing. For anyone who is on the fence about this game, what I would say is this: the dev and Microprose have very fairly priced the game. Due to the fact that it is single player only, it has a standard price of £23.79, and honestly I think that is a very reasonable price for the amount of hours you will get out of this game. There are plenty of other single player games that are a lot more expensive that you will spend less hours playing. So on a purely enjoyment and per hour, this is really good value for money. Now obviously that is with the stipulation that I got my key for free, but I can say wholeheartedly that I would not have begrudged spending £23.79 on the game, and I would have really enjoyed it. And it's been on sale a couple of times since its release. I think most recently it was 15% off, so keep your eyes peeled on the Christmas sales on Steam. And of course, even that said, some people will get more out of it than I did, some people will get less out of it than I did, because you will spend more or less time playing the campaigns and the additional skirmish mode. My final thoughts are that this game gets a 4 out of 5 from me, or an 8 out of 10 if you want to put it that way, which is a very positive score. I had fun. The general design of the game and the battle system is a lot of fun. The units have variety, from the choppers to the tanks to the infantry, and there are genuine moments of excitement during the battles, and you can see that in my gameplay videos. I've really enjoyed it at times. It drops a couple of points for dropping off towards the end of the operation set, which is a real shame, because at the start it showed what it was really capable of, but then failed to continue to deliver that. But you know, in my many hours of playing, really my only complaints are, it's a shame that there wasn't more big events in the campaigns, and it's a shame that the AI was a bit too spammy at the end of the campaign. Otherwise, I really enjoyed my time with it. And hey, who says RTS games can't still be single player these days? Thanks everyone for watching. Please do like, share, subscribe. Let me know in the comments down below what you thought of Regiments, and if you're looking forward to the upcoming DLC.